Live for Hamadi Hump Day.
Woo!
So I did actually take a second and organize all of our podcasts into a nice little playlist
Oh, nice.
on YouTube. In fact, I'm going to put that link here in the comments. Hopefully, that should show up on YouTube and possibly Facebook. We'll see. But I don't know if you can see that there, but hamadi.com/hump day.
Hump day.
Hump day. And you can see all the previous episodes and watch and troll. These are unedited, unscripted, largely unplanned conversations. Stream of Hamadi consciousness.
Occasionally, we'll have a topic that we know beforehand that we're going to want to speak about, but that's, I think, kind of rare.
Yeah, kind of rare.
Yeah.
Today it was kind of funny because we were trying to get our youngest brother on here, Brian. He's well, we could say he's not on here. He's a Texas Ranger, and but he was like, guys, man, I'd love to join you, but I can't be on there talking politics and stuff. People don't need to hear what I think, as a Texas. I'm like, you're right, they don't need to hear that. So we'll we were trying to get him on today. I was like, we'll talk about movies or whatever, man. And yeah, and he was like, oh, okay, well, I can talk movies. And so
is he coming?
He couldn't make it today. Hey, Brian, what's happening? Yeah, he couldn't make it today, and so we'll save that for another time. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do movies. I mean, we could probably do an entire show just on Star Wars and what has happened to it, because he's like a true aficionado, like even into the what's it, the extended universe when there was novels and stuff before.
Yeah, he's all canon, non-canon. He's got the whole thing sorted out.
That would actually be kind of a cool conversation. I haven't heard what he's thought about, like the new Disney produced Star Wars stuff or anything like that.
Yeah, so I don't want to speculate without him here, but but that would be really fun.
Man, we could do that for sure.
Yep.
I mean, I'm tempted, since he's not here, to talk about politics, since I just now got another email from Harris for President.
Well, let's do it, man. We're unrestricted today. We're unrestricted today.
It's so dreary. What is this one? Our records show that you haven't given to Kamala's campaign yet.
Hey, they got that
less than 100 days until the election and time running out before end of the month deadline.
Are you going to do the right thing?
Deadline for what? There's no deadline at the end. It's the reporting deadline for the FEC.
Right.
I was counting on you to make your first donation. For a while there, I was getting $7. Just give us $7. There's over and over and over again. Like $7. That's oddly specific. It's like, remember when panhandlers, this was kind of a trend maybe about 10, 12 years ago, where they would ask for an extremely specific amount. Like you'd be filling up your car with gas and some guy would come and say, oh, excuse me, I'm not trying to, sell you anything. I'm not trying to beg. You'd say, I just need $12.36 in order to get, to buy gas, whatever, or buy this bus ticket. It was always extremely specific. That died out, fortunately.
They've actually done research on this. So like one of my favorite things to study over the years has been persuasion, influence, how people are influenced, how they're persuaded, how seemingly intelligent people get conned into the craziest things. And but they've done studies on that. So like if you come and say, hey, I need, let's say you're trying to close a deal and the price is $5,000, right?
Okay.
You can bet your ass that they're going to negotiate, right? They're going to be like, oh, we were thinking more like 4,200, whatever,
Right.
But if you say, listen, we crunched some numbers over there, and we think everything that you've got going on, the numbers that I have here is $6,200, $6,257 and 32 cents.
They're probably not gonna be like, well, I was thinking more like 56. Yeah.
They don't. The pushback is absurdly smaller because you obviously put a lot of thought into that. No, that's not a number you threw out there. It
sounds like a scientific number.
Yeah. And in fact, the 7 number for some reason, and in fact, if you look at most of the offers that you get on Facebook and other sales funnels you may stumble into on the internet, almost always end in a 7. $7, $17, $27, $47, $377. I mean, like, I don't know why, but they have done A/B studies on this till they're blue in the face. The number 7, for some reason,
it's a deal number.
When people see a 9, they automatically round up. So $499, that's $500. We all, like you round it up. But somehow 497 or 477 doesn't sound like 500.
It sounds like 450.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like something
even
else.
400. In fact, your brain almost discounts the $97 and just thinks it's $400. It's and that's just a $2 difference, but that $2 is an expensive $2. It makes it from being an impulse buy to something I got to talk to the wife about, right? It's really interesting.
Human beings are funny this way. I think this reminds me of something my oldest daughter was telling me. There's a research study that was done on how many. There's like a part of your brain that does visual processing, right? And there's like a little chunk of it, like a little area that estimates quantity, but it only estimates like up to 4.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's right.
Yeah, so it's
I don't know if it's 4, but it's an absurdly small number. It's like
very small.
7. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's like you can just look at something and immediately, like they can flash something in front of your like that, and you'll be like, oh, there's 2 of them, oh, there's 3 of them, there's whatever. But if it's just one more, then it's like there was a bunch. There's a bunch, some I don't know. Right. Yeah, but it's like this is apparently so important for human flourishing that there is a dedicated part of visual cortex that's estimating small numbers.
It's fascinating. How many prairie dogs do I need to capture to feed the fam in the cave?
2, sir, 2 prairie dogs.
Hey, don't underestimate
next
prairie dog. That's right, man. That's right. That's right. In the apocalypse.
Speaking of, so I had just read an interesting report. This is totally random. I don't know. We'll get to our real conversation soon.
This is the real conversation. That's what people don't know.
No, this is it. It can't be. That's too depressing. No, this report was on like the most environmentally sustainable foods, and especially, and this is one of the things that a lot of people are worried about right now. Most environmentally sustainable proteins. So it's one thing to be able to say, oh, okay, you can plant potatoes in the backyard and you can feed someone for quite a while. This is so nutrient dense. Potatoes, right? In fact, whole countries have survived on potatoes at various times. But there's no protein in it. It's basically just a bunch of starch.
Yeah.
So like so we're pretty sure that its environmental impact, the worst one is probably beef, or one of the worst. Requires a lot of water, a lot of food that goes in, a lot of time. There's a lot of
beef.
Effort.
You mean cows, raising cows?
Yeah. There's there's a lot of manpower that goes into them, a lot of land, per like ounce that you get of food on the other end. And then pigs are cheaper, chicken are cheaper, and then you start to get below that. And a lot of people had said, well, the most environmentally effective one is insect protein, arthropod protein. So like you've got like the mealworms, and we were talking about Snowpiercer the other day. Just eat your
Hakuna Matata, baby.
Your cockroach bricks or whatever. Well, which is one of the funny things. Shrimp.
Oh, Snowpiercer.
Yeah. Shrimp have one of the highest protein, like the highest protein per gram of any food. Like, so I mean, and that's arthropods of shrimp. I mean, a shrimp is like insects are very close. So they're both invertebrates. So it's like, hey, I mean, these things really are incredibly nutrient dense, but it's very hard to tell people, like, what you should be doing. Let's grind up some crickets.
Yeah.
It's not an easy sell. Although I've had them. There's some South American.
They were on
food.
Shark Tank. Cricket crackers or cricket something.
I think they're delicious.
Something with crickets.
Yeah. Put a little hot sauce on there. It's good.
Chocolate
Well,
covered
anyway,
crickets or something.
number two, and I think this one is much more palatable, is fish. And you say, fish? Aren't there issues with like overfishing and stuff? There is with large fish, especially large fish that live kind of deep. But if we have small fish that live relatively close to the surface, they breed incredibly fast. They eat, algae, plankton, all this other stuff that also breeds incredibly fast. It's easy to scoop them up because they're right there on the surface. Oh yeah, cricket cookies. We should have some sometime.
The perfect cookie with the perfect protein. There you go.
Yeah. So this is where it gets really interesting. So the fish that meets this bill is Atlantic herring. Atlantic herring, we call them usually sardines.
Okay.
Yeah. So very small, easy to
Yeah.
capture.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Atlantic herring.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Target.
Yeah,
Dress that up a little bit.
It sounds so sophisticated.
Yeah.
The way that they're usually bought is in aluminum or tin cans, pre-cooked. And the reason why this is so environmentally conscious is that they don't really have expiration dates. This technology was invented for Napoleon's army so that he could maintain supply lines and stuff. And they'll occasionally find canned fish from the Napoleonic era still sealed, still edible.
Still edible.
Yes, because
Napoleon fish.
Yeah, because they put the fish into the metal container and it's cooked in a sealed metal container. There's no bacteria. Tin, aluminum is not porous, doesn't rust, and doesn't require any refrigeration. Has basically unlimited shelf life, and there's no food waste, right? Because it's not like, oh, this went bad, we got to throw it away, or this is costing money to sit on the shelf. It's very dense, easy to store, very high quality protein, very renewable. So maybe it gives insects a run for their money. So I don't know. Next time you're in the store and you're thinking, what's the most I could get this Impossible Burger.
Oh, those are delicious, by the way.
Or I could get some Atlantic herring.
Or go into the backyard and dig up some cockroaches, right?
Yep. Delicious.
Interesting. Yeah, that's you made me think of something a minute ago. And it's not really appropriate though. I'm not gonna share that.
Good. Off camera. Later.
You know what? No, I will. So my buddy Dan and I went to Thailand a few years ago, and we ate some bugs. They had scorpions, in fact, on a stick, and
like it's street food,
real
like
tasty.
Yeah, from the vendor. Yeah,
it was real tasty. I was, you're like, I'm gonna have to do this because it's like drinking the worm at the bottom of the tequila jar. It's like, yeah, you have to do that. There was a scorpion, in fact, in one of the tequila bottles at one of the bars I used to go to here in Austin, and I managed to drink that one.
What do you mean here in Austin? You're not in Austin. You're not even in the same county as Austin.
When I used to live in Austin,
that's more like it.
Oh, yeah, wow, you just made me sad, dude.
Had to rub it in.
Well, I figured that today might be a fun day to I don't know whether you want to call it cruise the internet or just kind of like
react to some stories,
react to some stories here, just because there's so much insanity out here. So I don't know if you saw this one from this was some of these Trump stories. We talked a couple weeks ago, and you had asked me, do I feel like the dynamics have changed at all, right? And I said no, I think it's still Trump's to lose. Remember after the Kamala thing, Kamala, right? Kamala. Trump
I don't know how to
Kamala.
I don't know how to pronounce
I think it's
her name.
Kamala. Anyway.
Okay.
And I said it's his to lose, right? As long as they don't. But man, for the last, I don't know how you feel about this, but for the last couple of weeks, him and JD have been saying some pretty knuckleheaded things that I can't get my mind around. Why would you spend time doing this when you've got all these winning issues that you could hammer them on? But whether it's
Um,
talking about her race or talking about her gender or talking about or JD with the cat lady thing uh, and
was
only people with children they care more about America than I don't really get it. Do you have any
well,
thoughts?
yeah. So I think some of these stories, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit. I think some of these are non-stories. These are not real stories. So yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
So
who
so
cares?
this is a
This is
fascinating.
crazy.
Well, so this is kind of a fascinating story. So um I don't know that he should be the one making this point, but this is an interesting point. If you recall, do you remember a lady by the name of Rachel Dolezal? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah,
Her?
yeah, yeah. She
Yeah.
identified as a black person. Yeah.
Right. Like she just felt so deeply connected to Black culture, especially African American culture, and dyed her skin kind of dark and wore her hair in a particular way. And she became the head of the NAACP chapter at her. Um, yeah, she was. I mean, passed as black,
Changed her name, Nkechi Diallo, right there.
and yeah, and it was
Formerly known as Rachel Dolezal.
it was scandalous that she sort of stole black identity when
Cultural
she herself
appropriation, I think.
was
Yeah,
not black.
exactly.
Right.
Right.
Now, of course, I always found the story kind of interesting for other reasons. If you start thinking about like, who's an oppressed class, or do we have oppressed classes in America, and what cultural appropriation looks like. If this was 60 years ago or 70 years ago, you probably wouldn't want to um, pretend to be black if you weren't, because you would be
Not doing yourself any favors.
you're
Yeah.
not doing yourself any favors. But it seems like, at least for her, that it did do her some favors. It was like it was her whole career really was based on this. So anyway, um, so Harris is Indian and Jamaican. Her family in Jamaica were a slave owning family. So I mean, it's not like relatively recently, right? It's not like, well, back in the 1600s. It's like, no, recently they were, slave holding family. And all the pictures of her as a kid are her in Indian dress, talking about being the first Indian American. And so, is Harris, if she were not a prominent politician, and if she wasn't like the closest thing to stopping Trump or whatever, would she be a Rachel Dolezal? Because here's the fun part: if you look at the right wing counterpart of the MSNBC article that you're showing, there's a lot of recent video of her speaking, where she'll adopt um, a kind of a southern black accent when she's talking. It's like back down south, the way we all speak, kind of thing. And it's really weird. Like she just sort of turns it on. Like,
Oh, did you say weird? Oh, interesting.
well, yeah, it's kind of entertaining. Well,
Interesting.
it is interesting, but it's one of those where it's very strange, right? Like, why? Now, for me, I don't care. Like, I'm not sitting here trying to safeguard black identity from interlopers, like whatever. That's for people with that identity to safeguard if they wish to. That's none of my business. Um, but it's a fascinating. Like, if she becomes president, would she be sort of woman of color? Yes, but the first black woman president.
but
Seems like
but which color?
it seems like the answer.
Who
Seems like the answer
cares?
would be no.
I guess this is my question: is who cares? Why would that
Hmm.
be of interest to anyone? Why would you? I mean, she's not
Well,
making an issue of that. He is.
no. That's the thing. She is, and
If she says I'm half black, I mean, which she is.
uh,
That's like me saying I'm half Iranian. I am. So I mean, do I go around waving the Iranian flag? Do I even know how to speak Farsi? No. Like, could other
yeah.
Iranians go? He's not really Iranian. He grew up in Toledo, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, it is a fact.
So
I'm
it's
half
like
Iranian. I
imagine
am
you're
more
running.
aware of Iranian culture than your white.
Well, like it would be more like this. It would be like imagine you were running for city council there where you're living, and you found out there's a really large Afghan population, and you're like, Afghan, they speak Dari.
that's
Dari is
next.
very
That's
similar to
next door to
Farsi.
Iran. I could say,
There's
hey, I'm kind of
there's a
like
lot
you.
of ethnic similarities there. Um, and what if you just started wearing Afghan dress all the time, and you started like saying various phrases, and you just went out of your way to be like representing our people, right? And it's like, wait a minute, what do you mean our people? And then we started to dig up pictures of you not Afghan, not
But
all
I
this other
would
stuff, and it's just like,
okay.
wouldn't it be a little? It's kind of
I would
goofy.
think, yeah, I would think that's kind
Yeah.
of goofy, but it's not any goofier than Trump pretending to be a Christian, for example. I mean, like, he's, he's never read the Bible. He does, from listening to him talk, he has no idea anything that he's talking about, and yet, he's a man of prayer now, and blah blah blah. It's like obvious pandering, but nobody gets in a twist about it. Nobody's like, how dare he pretend to be a like. And we know he's not even really a Christian. He's said he's
Yeah.
never asked God for forgiveness. You
Well,
can't be a Christian if you've never done that. So, like, but she actually is black. That's why I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, why would you go as a segue? And I get what you're saying. There's a difference there, and maybe being black has never been part of her. What you're saying is being black has never been part of her identity, and now all of a sudden she's trying to make it part of her identity. Is would be the argument there, not what you're saying, but that would be the argument that it's fair game because it's been somewhat more obscure, and now all of a sudden it's maybe more front and center, and that's kind of strange. Got it. How do you feel about the JD Vance with the family stuff? The Democrats, the people running the country, are a bunch of childless cat ladies they're miserable, and they want to make the rest of us miserable. So, like, that's why they're actually doing all this stuff to make everybody's life miserable. And if you don't have children, you actually don't have a vested interest in the future of them. You just have an interest in yourself. So, like, you shouldn't even be making policy. Like.
So I need to see his comments in context, of course. There was a really fun. Fun is probably the wrong word, but there was a study that came out pretty recently on different demographic things that made you more likely to be conservative. And one of the things that they noticed when they were doing this is that women specifically had a very low likelihood of being conservative when single, and a very high likelihood of being conservative when married.
Okay.
So there is this effect. I don't know what to call it. There's probably a name for it out in sociology. There's this effect where the more financially secure you are, the happier you are, the more involved with your family you are, the less appealing socialism is to you.
Well, but that's obvious. Like,
yeah.
when you don't have anything, you think the fact that other people who do have things is unfair. When you have things of your own, you don't want anybody taking them.
Well, no, that's the thing is
to oversimplify.
The switch from more likely to be liberal to more likely to be conservative wasn't based on household income. Like, it didn't make any difference.
Because I can always go make more money. It's having things that you need to protect, and that really is what it is.
Or in this case, and this is
and it could be landowners too. I mean, property owners tend to be more conservative.
Well, one of the theories, and again, no one knows why this is. I mean, this is ongoing research, but one of the theories that was out there was that if you don't have if you don't have your husband who has your back basically and is going to make if someone comes through this door intent on causing you harm, you've got this big strong man here,
big man that's going to take care of you,
who can take care of it, right? And like, you're protected and everything's going to be fine, and he's got your back. And it's like, well, if you don't have that, then you're probably looking for the government to do that for you. Like, let's have better police forces. Let's make sure that there's a strong safety net. Because if I lose my job and I'm, then, I don't, it's not like my husband's can be like, hey, honey, don't worry about it. You will find something for you. You just take a few months to figure out what you want to do. And I got it covered. It's like, oh, there's no one to say that to you. And so it's like, well, you're going to need all this other stuff. And so there's this, kind of effect that goes on with marriage, specifically for women. I don't know if for men this correlation wasn't as strong. Like a liberal man, married, unmarried, doesn't seem to make that much difference. So saying, okay, who's voting for the Democrats? The crazy cat ladies. It's like, well, not totally false. Like it's kind of a and I'll use their messaging. It's a weird way to put it, and I'm not sure. It's weird. I'm not sure that's the point that I would make on the stump, is to say, well, hey, look, here's Now
this is let's see if we can find his quote. Okay, so here in 2020.
I'm always suspicious of stuff like this. So you notice it says in a podcast suggested, and then we have quotes of only phrases. Yeah.
Here's the quote. Here's the actual quote, right?
Okay.
So there are just these basic cadences of life I think are really powerful and valuable when you have kids in your life. The fact that so many people in America's leadership class just don't have that. And then he continues, I worry it makes people more sociopathic and ultimately our whole country a little bit less mentally stable. And of course, you talk about going on Twitter. Final point I'll make is you go on Twitter, and almost always the people who are most deranged and psychotic are people who don't have kids at home.
Mm-hmm.
He also wrote in a separate tweet, our country's low birth rates have made many elites sociopaths.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and then here's the response. Once again, the left-wing media have twisted his words and spun a false narrative about his positions. He was talking about politicians on the left who support policies that are anti-child and anti-family. So I'll give him this. I mean,
when you had kids later in life, did your perspective change?
100%. 100%. It did.
Were you less interested in yourself, more interested in your community? What kind of future you're leaving for your kids?
Of course. Would I call myself a sociopath before? No. Would I say that my perspective was?
Oh, well, you wouldn't have, but no, I'm just kidding.
Would I say, good point. Would I say my perspective was different? Yes. Was it wrong? No. I just care about different things now. And, it's funny, like, take the trans issue, right, with trans rights and whatnot.
Oh wow, time to get Facebook. cut the feed right here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna get deplatformed. No, but I mean, it's first of all, like, if somebody's trans, like, God bless them, and we should have resources to help people that. I mean, that's difficult. First of all, I can't identify. I don't identify. I'll be the first one to say I have no idea what that's like. So I've seen enough. Like, I remember the first show that I watched that really kind of helped me understand that plight was a show on Amazon. I think Transparent. Did you ever watch that?
Oh, I saw a little bit of it. Yeah.
It's for those who haven't watched it, it's this dad who has been very successful. I guess all his kids are grown and gone now, and he's been, but for years, been cross-dressing in private, etc. And he finally comes out that no, he's a woman, and he's been a woman this whole time, trapped in this man's body, and so he decides to live as a woman, and it's all about his grown kids now trying to like deal with this trans parent, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also he's being transparent about who he is. It's a really cool play on words. And there was an interesting scene when one of his kids asks him, he's dressed up in drag or whatever, as a woman, and well, I guess, and he doesn't even transition like to the point where he demands, he did change his pronouns or whatever. He's not. His son, I think, I can't remember the exact words. Basically, like, well, Dad, why do you feel like you have to dress up like this, like, and be in costume, And he's like, oh no, son, when I dressed up as a man, I was in costume. Like I've been in costume for my whole life. Like this is who I really am.
Mm.
I don't necessarily get it, but I don't judge it. It doesn't, and to me, I don't think it does. All these people are, oh, what's society coming to? Blah, blah. Dude, really? I mean, like, who cares? And the and I mean, it is challenging for that person, obviously, to come out. Like that's a that's not your normal what do you have for breakfast conversation, right? So all that being said, right? All of that being said, I think it is crazy what's going on in California right now. But they just passed these laws. Elon Musk was talking about it the other day, where if a child is experiencing what they call gender dysphoria, that they can request and be administered drugs to, you know, transition physically uh, as young as like elementary school, junior high, without informing the parents at all. Like they're not even, and in fact, they're not allowed to inform the parents. And the assumption is that the parents would be against it or object or have some kind of, you know, and they don't want to traumatize the child by, and so, and I have so many issues with that. It has, even forget parental rights, forget all of that. Like the fact that you're encouraging a young human being to, in essence, live a double life with the people that are the closest to them. Like, I don't see how that is not problematic, to use a polite word, at a minimum problematic, right? And I don't get that. So there are a lot of, and of course, as a parent, I have all these other feelings. Like, um, you know, Loa and I have talked about, like, okay, well, what if one of our kids came out as gay or transparent or any of these, you know, any of the LGBTQ plus letters in the alphabet, right? I'd like to think that I would be loving and supportive and whatever. Like I don't have a reaction against any of those things. That being said, like I would also not support uh, chemical alterations to their physique while they're developing as a human being. Like I just, and even setting aside my personal opinion, all this other stuff, you've got decades of research now that have been done in all the Scandinavian countries and England, all these other places that actually do have, you know, government provided healthcare. And they have an interest in studying this stuff, and they've come out with you know, overwhelmingly, like, so are there you know, the big argument here is like, well, you know, if we don't allow them to transition, you know, they could commit suicide, and you know, people commit suicide because they feel trapped in this wrong body, etc. And there are some people who have committed suicide. That is a fact, right? But there's a certain percentage of them, so let's use that as a statistic. Then you have another statistic which they've now measured for enough years to know that people who medically transition as a child, now as an adult, regret transitioning. So overwhelming, not I don't know what the actual number is, but it is way more that regret it than, you know, than you know, or demanding you know, well, I'm going to kill myself if I don't get the transitional stuff done. So I just, to me, it's like, well, gosh, you know, even the evidence is saying don't do that. So at least from my perspective, and I'm happy to, you know, anybody's watching this, you disagree with me and you're a scientist and you want to debate it, the meta, by all means, come on here and educate me. I'm 100% open-minded and ready to be educated. It just makes no sense to me at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see how, and for most, I have friends who live in California who have moved out because of this. I'm thinking right now of a couple who took their daughter out of school, and and they're saying, look, it's amazing. You know, she was having all these like, it was gender dysphoria, a couple other things going on with her, and she's I want to say 14, and they moved to another state that doesn't do that, and I'll just keep the details, you know, out of the story. But like, they moved to a different state, and they've been in that state now for just 6 months. And in 6 months, you know, of course, the daughter has new friends, new school, new peer group, new everything, where that's just not a thing. And all of a sudden, her gender dysphoria is gone. Her all the elements around this are gone. And and he was telling me, he's like, dude, like she starts experiencing this, and we find out about it. We go to her principal, this counselor. Hey, involve us in this conversation. What's going on? Oh, we're not allowed to talk to you about it. And finally the daughter's like, no, I want them in the conversation. So the daughter's speaking up for them to be in the conversation, and then they're still like, well, we don't know. And he's like, this is crazy. Like, I mean, of any human beings on the earth, I'm the one that's responsible for my daughter growing up and evolving into a full grown functioning human being. Why would I not be in the conversation? So I do get what he's saying, that there are some family unfriendly, I say all that to say this. I do get what he's saying. There are some family unfriendly policies that are out there, and by all means we should be rethinking those, right? But then to just overly paint it, and where I was going with this is it seems like to me that, like, you don't need to just overly paint with this broad brush, that if you're on that side, you know, you're likely a psychopath, you don't care about kids, you blah 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 blah. Because all that's happening is, like, you think about, you got one political party, you got two political parties, both which own, let's say, 35-40% of the electorate, that are going to vote with them no matter what. And then you've got that, like, 30, 35, 40%, whatever you want to call it, 20% in the middle, that those sides need to convert to their side in order to win. And so, just from chess playing, like, I'm here to win this game, not proclaiming the values of either side. If you're trying to win the game, you've got to talk to that undecided middle to get more of those people on your side. And it just seems to me you don't get those people on your side by just disparaging all of them as
crazy cat ladies.
Crazy cat ladies. Your thoughts?
Overall, that, wow. No, I agree with you. Like I said, I don't think that's very effective messaging.
I'm going to get a refill here. Keep talking though. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll speak to the empty chair.
To the chair.
The RFK style debate. But yeah, I don't think that's really good messaging. And I think there's the Biden, I don't want to know what to call it, withdrawal. Coup probably sounds too strong, although the rumor is that he was threatened with the 25th Amendment. It's basically like you can either serve out your term, or you can
do it the easy way or the hard way,
or we'll remove you. But whatever it is you want to call Biden not being in the race.
That's not a coup, though. That's a constitutional mechanism. I mean,
right, of course.
I mean, but truly, though, that's not a coup. That's a process.
Pressure was placed on him to whatever. Anyway, but whatever that was, I think there's been a little bit of a struggle to find footing there for that campaign. I think the Harris campaign looks a little bit more professional right now, just because they're simply doing the exact same campaign they had before, right? So
except you have a candidate that's actually going out, making speeches and making the case, which was my big point to you a few months ago, which is Biden can't sell it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether but so far she's been more effective than he has. That's a pretty low bar, but 90% of success is showing up, as Woody Allen says.
Yeah, I mean, showing up, yes. I mean, the videos have been kind of underwhelming. I don't think she's very good as a retail politician. She's kind of the opposite issue that Hillary Clinton had, I think. So Hillary Clinton looks really bad on paper. Botches Benghazi, seems to have covered up stuff for her husband, is not, kind of unlikable. But then when people would sit down with her and you would see these videos of her talking with people in coffee shops or whatever, you're like, wow, she just seems really compelling and really empathetic. And like, we just need to see more of her. It probably would have been better than, to have sort of ideas, because I think she was much better in person than she was on paper. I think Harris has the opposite problem, where it's like, oh my gosh, this inspiring figure.
She's better on paper than in person.
You get her in person, and like the stuff that she says, if she's speaking, like just responding to people, is very disjointed. She tends to do something where she'll have a sentence that will go on for too long, and she'll be nodding, like, and then everyone's like, what are we nodding? What's happening? There's a she's been doing so there's a lot of celebrities, of course, that are Democrats, and they're lined up to do like little mini concerts for her so that we can get more of a crowd. So Megan Thee Stallion, right? The
Megan Thee Stallion.
Twerking Queen did one for her. So we've got like, good twerking performance and stuff. And then that finishes up. Harris comes out on stage and like a quarter of the people walk out because it's just like,
Oh,
well,
interesting. They
yeah,
didn't
like
come to hear her. They came to hear.
they came
Yeah.
to. Then this is the opposite problem that Obama had. So when Obama was running, he also had rock musicians, whatever, playing, including I think the Decemberists played for him one point. And people said, "Oh, yeah, they're there to see the Decemberists, not Obama." It's like, no, Decemberists usually play at that time for like crowds of 2 or 3,000, and
Mm-hmm.
this is a crowd of 30,000 to see Obama. And Decemberists are just sort of, I mean, this is
They're
like the
happy to
biggest
be there.
stage
Yeah.
they've ever played on, right? So this is kind of the opposite
Thanks
issue
for
with Harris.
inviting us.
Yeah, I know, right? Here's
Yeah.
you're like, cool, thanks for the song. Get off the stage. We want to hear like the inspiring candidate talk. And Harris is kind of the opposite of that right now. So I don't know. I think she steps into a campaign that already had its target, already had its messaging, and she's just like, and now we're doing that. Already had its fundraising kind of in place. They just all that stuff just transitioned over, and I think running against the incumbent now, there's a lot of messaging in place, a lot of field work that's been done. That now is they're having to kind of start over. So this is the stuff that would have played out probably 3 or 4 months ago that we're
Mm-hmm.
now just now seeing. And so I think that's kind of strategically good for the Harris campaign because maybe Trump doesn't have enough. Yeah, falsely accuses. I love it.
I will give him this, though. I mean, he did make these comments. I'm just seeing this at the National Association of Black Journalists,
Yeah.
which, I mean, let's face it. I mean, most of these characters won't go on a show with opposing views to begin with. I'll give him that for going in the Lion's Den.
Well, but I think this is that because that's like I said earlier. Like I'm not around here. It's not my job to police Black identity, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
it's not his either. But um, if he's talking to people who, in a way, it sort of is their role. I mean, even if they don't want it, it's sort of de facto their role to say, "Look, are you really going to allow someone to culturally appropriate your ethnicity, your experience? She has no experience. She doesn't have the African American experience. You have the African American experience. Are you willing to let her kind of steal it from you?" And
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting case. I don't know. Maybe it's the wrong one to make. I have no idea.
Now,
But
what do you think about this one right here? This
yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
border thing.
She's better at the border. She'll do better at the border than Trump will. Like, really? Like, the funny thing is that you were in charge of the border and this is what happened. Trump was in charge of the border, something else happened. So
Tactically, though, do you think they have a good? Do you think they have? So, first of all, I think tactically, that is her biggest weakness, and so to run straight at it and attempt to own it, I think is intelligent.
well, it's not owning it. It's just like the
Well,
reality distortion kind of thing. It's
but
like, no, it was a success.
well,
Declare
it's not.
victory.
That's not what she said. That's not. Just so you know, that's not what she said. And I don't know how much time. Do you spend a lot of time listening to the actual raw, like to me when I want to comment on one of these things, like the first thing I do is just let me go watch what they actually said. Um, do you do that a lot?
I try not to listen to the candidates themselves.
So
I find them both very difficult to. I find them both very difficult to listen to.
Well, so what she said, which I thought was an interesting case, was that look, we all realize that there's a problem at the border,
Okay.
and so 2 years ago, we started working with Republicans to create this border legislation, which they did, and rated by everybody, including the U.S. border people or whatever, says the most conservative, most restrictive immigration bill ever proposed, and it would have passed except that Trump came out and basically said, "Look, we can't pass it." And he actually said, one thing I do love about Trump is he just go ahead and say the quiet part out loud. If we let them pass this, then they will be able to claim victory on the border. At least, hey, we're working on it, and we don't want them saying that. So you can't vote for this, which I thought was pretty cynical.
So
But I mean, tactically,
did read
it
that
makes
border
sense.
proposal. The border proposal was more like a capitulation than it was any kind of victory. I mean, when I say it worked with the Republicans in the Senate, I mean, you have to remember which Republicans we're talking about, right?
Was the most conservative ones. I mean, the guy from Oklahoma. Well, we could look it up real quick, but I mean, these were the hardest line, serious voices. The non mass deportation voices, but like how do we? Because I mean, like, and dude, like, I mean, just all these people calling for mass deportation, they have no idea what that actually looks like, and once it's like that movie. Do you remember that movie? Conspiracy that I had you watch, or that we watched together.
Yeah.
For those of you that haven't seen it, it's the movie where the officials in the Third Reich, Nazi Germany, plan out how to carry out the final solution of exterminating all the Jews. Because before that, they had been taking away their rights and confiscating property, etc. Right, and so, but the question is, well, who's a Jew and who's not a Jew, right? And so, okay, so, well, this person is full-blooded Jew. This person, their mother was a Jew, their father was not a Jew, or vice versa. Or this person, one of their grandparents were, or this person, one of their great grandparents were. What about the Germans that marry a Jew and then they have Jewish children, but those children are German citizens, et cetera? How do we deal with that, right? And so there was all of this, and the movie is, and it's taken straight from the transcript of the meeting, which I can't believe these Germans kept such great records. Thank you, thank you, Nazis. But it's disturbing to watch because you're just like, oh. So that's what will happen when they go about this. You can't. It's not like they're talking about, like, I mean, okay, the guy that just came over 5 minutes ago, right? Yeah, that's easy. We can deport that guy, right? But the ones that have been here for a while and they have kids, they're in high school, they're honor students, they were born here, whatever the case may be. I mean, like, the last time that we had an amnesty was under Reagan, so we're talking about like 40 years ago. You're going to deport, but these people, oh yeah, deport 12 million people, 15 million people, whatever the number is. That's I can't wait for them to try to implement that, because that's going to be a public relations, nightmare, a disaster. So I doubt they'll get very far. The courts will put the kibosh on all of that.
No, well, that's not the way it would work. What you'd probably have is it would probably be done on the demand side. So you'd probably have pretty strong ID laws, work verification, or legal verification for someone to be able to receive a paycheck. So basically, full mark of the beast level, like you cannot buy or sell, you cannot have a job or do anything without having, being able to show that you're here in this country legally. And so then the people who you start, raiding businesses that or suspect hiring illegal immigrants. No one gets arrested, right? But it's basically large fines, and if there are no jobs for you, if there's no resources for you, if there's, it's like, well, we'll pay your bus fare to leave. It's not like we're gonna round you up because there's no reason to. You just have to go. But you'll go on your own accord. That's probably the method it'll be used if something like that were to happen. However, the thing you're talking about, the whole Harris thing and the border stuff from a couple years ago. The thing that I've never really understood is why they wouldn't enforce the existing laws. That they made enforcing the existing laws subject to passage of these new laws. So, I mean, imagine like you get home and one of your kids is like got some scissors out and is, stabbing the furniture, right? Your couch is like, she's just cutting up the couch, and you're like, hey, you need to stop that, and she's sitting there with the scissors. She's like, well, I'm going to keep cutting this until this other thing, about who gets to stay up late, I'd like to renegotiate that. And it's like, well, we'll renegotiate it, but we're not going to renegotiate it while you're just purposefully ignoring the rules right now. And so I think this was a kind of an interesting bit of gamesmanship on their part, that like, well, we can just ignore the laws that are currently in place. Don't, not only, either enforce them, either do like malicious enforcement or no enforcement at all. And then we can say, well, we have a crisis, and now this crisis involves, we have to create a solution. And the solution is these whole bunch of these new laws. And these include various carve-outs, money that gets shuttled here and there to our favorite causes, our favorite people, and then we can start fulfilling the law as it is. And it's like, oh yes, I love that. The bill would also supply more funding to interdict fentanyl, human trafficking, and included $60 billion in aid for Ukraine and 14 for Israel. So out of the
they said that money anyway.
I know. But the thing about this is
that's what's crazy to me. It's like, look, so to your point, if you remember when Trump was implementing all his border stuff, right? The courts shut him down over and over and over again because the stuff that he was doing was against the law. So it's not like you can say, oh, well, we just enforce the laws. Like, I mean, he was trying to implement all these things, and a lot of people say, hey, his heart's in the right place, trying to clean this up, and but he couldn't do the things he was trying to do. I mean, he could do them temporarily, but the court would always reverse him. So this bill fixes not all, but some structural elements of that. The biggest piece of it is the asylum piece, which we talked about a few weeks ago. That because right now the rule is to catch and release the asylum seekers. Oh, you came here for asylum. Oh, well, then we got to put you in this asylum queue until you can get a hearing. That's the law. Again, that's a law that Congress passed. So only Congress can undo that. The president can say all he wants to say about, like, okay, well, we're ending asylum. They can't do that because the law says.
Yeah, they had the stay in Mexico policy. So like, if you're seeking asylum from Mexico, then obviously we take you in, but if you're we're sort of assuming that Mexico is a friendly country. And so if you're coming from somewhere in South America and you're passing through Mexico on your way to the United States, you stay in Mexico and we'll sort it out.
Yeah.
You're right, wait in Mexico.
And that's fine.
Biden ended that.
Okay. And which is a huge mistake, right? So yes, that's something that can be fixed, right?
Yep. That's the thing. It's like if this is a mess right now.
But that's
don't point to the bill and say, hey, here's this perfect thing that would solve all of our problems. It's like, well, why don't you just do the things that you can do right now instead of letting it be as bad as possible?
But why
in order
would you
to maybe twist the screws on Congress to fix the stuff that you want fixed, and also for an additional $74 billion for
here's what's crazy,
military projects.
Well, but they already used that money. That money they used anyway. That's what's nuts about it. It's like, oh, if you object to that, the Ukraine money or the Israel money, it's like, well, I mean, and by the way, there's plenty of reasons to object to that, but your objection would have been completely futile because then you didn't even get the immigration. But the whole point of this was Republicans wanted to attach the Ukraine money so that they could get the immigration bill. And then what they gave up the immigration bill and still ended up spending the Ukraine money, which is, to me, nuts.
So that's because you have two different factions within the Republican Party.
I get
right.
what the factions
one wanted
are, but the end result, Russ, the end result is that they still spent the money, which I don't think you're a fan of. So to me, whatever tactics they used backfired on the position that you think probably should have been, taken. So like, I don't see how you can claim that that's an effective maneuver by any means. The other thing is the fact that the irony of the situation, to me, the irony is that is it fair to say that Democrats have been the biggest problem when it comes to addressing the border? To be completely like,
yes,
paint with a broad brush, right? Like Democrats are the ones that are objecting to
since about 2012
being tough on immigration.
Okay. However, prior to 2012, it was the opposite.
Right.
The
Right.
Republicans were
Because
like, let them in, let them in.
Democrats were party of labor trying to protect workers' wages, and Republicans were
Yeah,
party of big business trying to let more cheap labor into the country. Right.
correct.
So
So
2012,
since 2012,
2010,
I agree with
2012,
you.
something
Yeah,
like that. Okay.
yeah,
So the irony here is that because the situation was so bad, and again, we shouldn't have made this, Biden shouldn't have made the situation worse, but he did. He objectively made the situation worse. So now the situation is so bad that even Democrats are like, okay, we're open to actually cutting a deal here. And so they get two Republicans to write out a wish list of all the things that they can. I mean, this is the history of the bill, and you can go read the bill to see what it did. It's not like
Mhm.
it's been painted in retrospect to justify Trump's actions as, oh, it didn't do anything. It did a ton. And all of these are Republican priorities, again, and not big business Republicans. People try to control the flow of illegal immigrants into the country, which is, I think, the objective here. So they wrote their wish list. A couple of things were taken out, but 90% of what they wanted was in the bill, including reforming the asylum process, which is the biggest impediment to actually controlling the situation, the way it's written currently. So they did all that stuff. And the reason that they didn't pass it was because Trump came out and said, "Don't give him that issue
Well,
to run on." I mean,
I
that's
think
what
you're,
happened.
I think you're maybe
Or
mis.
what do you
Yeah.
disagree with my
Well, I
characterization?
think you might be misunderstanding our friends over in Macedonia. Um, 'Cause they
You mean Trump or the Trump voters?
the Trump voters, the Macedonians, right?
Macedonians, okay.
The Macedonians, they don't want to like control the flow of illegal immigration. You know, slow it down, bring it in under a manageable level, and then have like dream programs afterwards to handle the children of the people that came across. They want it all
Yeah, I
stopped.
know they want them all exported, and I'm
They
saying that that's not a
even
feasible
if you didn't
solution.
export them, like the minimum would be to shut it down. Like, remember, this is the crowd that says, you know, build the wall.
But you're talking about a very small fraction of the Republican voters. Like
Well, well, here,
your average everyday Republican who actually probably has their kids are friends with Dreamers, like for
hmm
sure.
sure.
And now Margaret, who was Anita, who was at your daughter's birthday party, is getting deported, right? Like that's nobody
Again,
really is thinking through that stuff.
we may not be talking about, so again, from the Macedonians, um, there might be some discussion about like whether deportation should take place or what the conditions would be, but at baseline, no one comes in without the proper paperwork.
But what is proper paperwork? So no asylum seekers either, right?
Again,
Okay. Well, again,
wait
so
in
if
wait
that's
in
what you
Mexico.
want, if that's
Wait in
what you
Mexico.
want, then you have to rewrite the existing
No,
law.
no, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, you
Wait in
do.
Mexico was legal. Listen, wait in Mexico was legal, and then it's like, hey, if your asylum thing gets adjudicated and you're good, then you come in. Well, you're not an illegal immigrant. You're illegal, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the people coming over with like bags of fentanyl stuffed up their rear ends and being shuttled across by the cartels and by human smugglers. We're talking about the amount of human trafficking that's going across there, of basically an uncontrolled border, the amount of resources it takes to just have this flood of people coming across, that even when they drop a few thousand of them off in these non-border towns, like, hey, everybody's a border town now, and they're like declaring emergency, we can't handle this number of people, and it's like, this is just like what comes over in 25 minutes in Arizona. Like what do you mean an emergency? That's not an you want to see an emergency, come down here. No, we can't come down there, it's too dangerous. So it's like, okay, the Macedonians want to shut that down. An asylum seeker that has been vetted, has waited in Mexico, everything's been adjudicated, we bring them in. They're legal. That's not an illegal immigrant, right? Now
Okay.
this
All right.
this so that wing of the Republican Party has been steadily growing in power within the party, and so when you say,
Mass
oh yeah,
deportations now. They have the signs.
The Magadonians. So when you say, "Oh, the yeah," see, there you go.
That's Fox News for you. So like, here's President Trump saying we should go ahead and bomb Mexico.
Strikes against the cartels.
It's crazy.
So
somehow this was not a big story.
Right. So this is the kind of thing, though, that I think when people look at it and say, "Oh my gosh, this was a Republican thing," it's like back when Obamacare was being debated. Like, "Oh, this is a Republican. Why are the Republicans upset about this?" It's like, well, because you've got the big business Republicans that would be totally fine with giant bailouts and guaranteed customers to their fellow big businesses, and no price transparency and all these other things that are baked into Obamacare. And they're like, "Yeah, it looks great to us." We have to. But now it's like we have to put on a show of not being in favor of it because the tide has turned, right? When you had like the Tea Party stuff coming up and all that. Well, if you look at where things are right now in the Republican Party, 2 years ago saying, well, we're just going to try to reduce the number of illegal immigrants to no more than 350,000 per, what was it, month? What was the number on it? I don't remember. It's something like the way they had it, there was like a cap. You could do 350,000 a month, I think, and then after that they cut it off. And they're like, "Wait, why can't the cap just be a zero?" We're talking about illegal immigrants. Why can't we just say zero? Why? It's illegal. Why don't we just enforce the law and so on? And so I think those forces within the party won out on whether or not that kind of compromise position can be taken. So, I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Like if you talked about the Democrat positions from, 5-6 years ago and see how they've changed, you'd have the same, I think you'd have the same kind of issues. You're like, well, this was a Democrat idea, right? I mean, I would love to see that. I would actually love to see, of course they never will because I don't think it's politically useful right now, but to talk about closing the border and be like, no, this is a Democrat plan. This is a Democrat plan to close the border, and like start pulling up quotes of people, Chuck Schumer in 2005 and Bernie Sanders in 2015. And you're like, oh, look, this is a Democrat idea. What's the problem? Why won't they support it? It's their own idea.
Yeah. It's sad that they've, this is I think, certainly, I mean, Trump admitted it, but I mean, could you say that Democrats use this for political theater as well? Of course. So,
of course they did.
Yeah, of course. So it's funny. You and I were talking before the broadcast about the numbers for the last election, and you were like, "Do you think it's really possible that X or whatever?" And I said, "Oh, you mean instead of a giant conspiracy or whatever?" But it's kind of funny. I think that I was thinking about our conversation afterwards, and I thought, it's like the JFK assassination. I've heard, and I love reading about that because it's just fascinating to me. But like, I mean, I've heard the mob was involved. I heard it was the CIA was involved. I heard whatever,
accidental from the guy behind it.
Friendly fire from the Secret Service agent. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard all these different things. And they all sound plausible to me. The one thing that I know for certain is that the Warren Commission report is complete bullcrap. I know that for a fact. There's no way Lee Harvey Oswald fired all three of those shots and acted all by himself. That is not what happened, right? And it's like same thing with 9/11, right? With 9/11,
something else happened. I don't know what.
Oh, I have all these questions. How did these buildings look like a controlled demolition? Is there no footage of this? How is that tiny hole in the Pentagon instead of a giant? Where's the rest of the plane? How the thing in Shanksville, the plane crashed into the field, but there's no debris of anything. It all was buried underground instantaneously, incinerated.
Building 7 collapses
7
with not a scratch on it.
None of these things look quite right to me. I don't know that I'm ready to say it was an inside job or any of that other stuff. One thing I do know is that the 9/11 Commission report is complete bullcrap. That is not what happened. That is not the full story, right? And, the same thing with the Trump assassination, right? I've heard conspiracy theories from, it was a concerted effort to kill Trump, that was done by the Democrats, right? And then the what is that? The what was
Crowd
the
strike.
crowd strike collapse that was supposed to be coordinated with. So the plan was you assassinate Trump, and then you have CrowdStrike blackout that would freeze everybody in place, just like that movie on Netflix, right? Like you cut out communications and the inability to travel, and then they would have kept that in place for several weeks while the
Sort
military
everything out.
right, and then and now everything magically comes back on, and we've got it all figured out now, and blah blah. Blah. I mean, and then when that didn't when they missed, then the CrowdStrike thing was already in place. The things were there, the code was implanted, they couldn't get it out, and so but they just they used that to delete all the evidence of the conspiracy instead, right? And then I've heard on the other side, oh, it's a complete false flag. Like you notice when Trump put his hand up to his ear, there was no blood, and then like a couple days after he had his bandage off, and there was no damage to his ear whatsoever. And it's like, wait a minute, what happened? So obviously completely made up by the Trump to make himself a martyr or whatever. I don't know. I have lots of questions. I'm not ready to say either way on either side, but one thing I know for sure, it was not some lone gunman on a room that just got into his head that he was going to do this someday. That doesn't make any sense. So I think like during the last election, right? Like in fact, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. They're like, Eric, you really don't believe the election was stolen last time? I'm like, no, I don't believe it was stolen. However, influenced, obviously, right? Like improperly influenced, of course, right? In fact, I don't know.
They bragged about it in time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you had a media
Fortification.
coordination, fortification, whatever you want to call it, right? So there are ways of like, Democrats have complained about it for years on their side with shutting down polling places in poor areas of town, minority areas of town. Voter ID laws, voter purges from the rolls where legit voters are wiped off, because of but only targeted in these zip codes, right? Where these are all things, and they're doing the same thing, but they've been doing that stuff for years, right? I mean, like gerrymandering districts. I mean, that in and of itself disenfranchises people. So and then on the right, you got the same thing. Oh, these, they're Florida, like, okay, well, we're going to let felons vote now, and all these different things, like, oh, you can't do that. That's going to completely eviscerate our voting base. Dude, the people have been trying shenanigans for, I mean, as long as this country has been in existence, to try to manipulate who shows up to vote, right? Now, once the votes are cast, right? After that, then that's where you could say everything up front was, I mean, and certain things are legal, certain things are illegal. All the shenanigans that are done just this side of legal, are they moral or not? I mean, we could have a whole conversation about that, but they are not technically cheating, right? There's nothing stolen about shutting down a polling place or whatever, right? Now, when you burn it down to the ground, then you have arson. That you did commit that crime, but you did not interfere with the election, right? You may have interfered with the election, but not technically, legally speaking, right? There's no crime there. After the votes are cast, right? If you manipulate the count, you manipulate the voting machines, you stuff ballot boxes, you bring in suitcases of fake ballots or whatever, right? All that stuff, that is where you steal the election. Like, and I think a lot of this is just like maybe terminology. Some people, oh, this election was stolen, and these people say, oh, no, it wasn't stolen. Well, we're disagreeing on actually what the word steal means, right? When you say the will of the people was thwarted, if that's what you mean, well, then I could say that the Electoral College thwarts the will of the people all the time. So, like, I mean, at some point, you have to kind of agree on, these are the rules that we play by, and this is how it works. And this team played by the rules and won, and this team played by the rules and lost, or didn't play by the rules and was disqualified, whatever the case may be. But that's where stolen, to me, is like, it gets a little problematic to use that term, right? And so that's kind of to me, it's like, man, if you have, and it goes back to Plato's Republic that we were talking about last week. It's like, if the design of your system is to hold on, Lo is calling me. Sorry, internet. Hey, Lo.
While we take a break for this important phone call, I would like to have a message from our sponsor. Our sponsor today is, I don't know, what product am I enjoying lately that I really like? Oh, so you'll often see me with this. This is a Brewmate. So what's inside it is not alcohol. Don't worry. This is a LaCroix. This is a sparkling water. This is limoncello. But this thing has a little frozen puck in it. And this, you keep it in the freezer. You put it in the bottom. Put your drink of choice in here. Like I said, sparkling water. And it will keep it ice cold for hours. It will go flat and be completely undrinkable before it gets warm. So this is brought to you by Brewmates.
And now these messages.
True Roman bread for true Romans.
For true Romans. Oh my gosh.
You got to get out of here.
No. Let's switch gears and talk about that show. That's a good.
The Rome
so
show.
Tired of all that garbage, man.
Well,
I will say one final thought. I'd love to hear your thoughts about my rant there.
Yeah.
But my final thought is, like, at some point, I don't know if there can be agreement about this, but I mean, like back when the country was founded, there was a debate about who actually should vote, right? Was it, should all citizens get the right to vote? Should all residents get the right to vote? Should only landowners get the right to vote? There was no debate about whether women should vote, by the way. Like, that was obviously no. But if you were a man, you own property, you were absolutely in. And then the rest of it is just, like, we've expanded the franchise over the years because the general feeling of most Americans has been the more people that are participating, the better, right? Now, you could feel free to disagree with that as an individual, but that has been the thrust of the American system, right? And so the real underlying question to me about, like, is the election stolen or not stolen, et cetera, things like that, is really like, was the will of the people actually represented? And to me, I mean, no, right? And not in the sense that Biden shouldn't have been president or Trump shouldn't have been president or whatever, but like, at no point since Obama, I think, since Obama on the Democratic side anyway, and since, I'm trying to think, maybe George W. Bush, maybe, but certainly Reagan. There has not been a time when you polled the party, Democratic voters or Republican voters, and said, "Are you happy with your candidate?" And where most people were like, "Yeah, he's great," right? The vast majority, on the right has been for, as many cycles as going. That's why it's like, oh, George W. maybe, but certainly Reagan. But there was massive conservative backlash against H.W. Bush being the nominee, too liberal. Romney, too liberal. McCain, too liberal. There's been the average Republican voter has thought they were too liberal for, years until Trump, and finally, oh, here's our guy, right? And on the Democratic side, dude, everybody loved Obama on the Democratic side, but like, even Republicans voted for Obama. The will of the people, I could say, okay, fine. But like, the vast majority of Republicans that I know, now this changed now, certainly all the vast majority of Republicans are in the bag for Trump, but 2020, 2016, certainly, he was not the favorite nominee. He just happened to get through the primary process. And so it's just, and those are the rules we have. But I would say, dude, the system is not geared to give the people actually what they want. It's not geared for them to effectively express what they want. And it is not geared for their elected representatives to actually effectively hear from them either, because it's so captured by big money and these parties have done such a good job of picking their voters instead of having the voters pick them through gerrymandering. And so And you know, I was talking to a friend of mine. It's like, dude, it is easy to understand why people think it's stolen, though, because with the fragmentation of news and how people live in these silos. I know a lot of Democrats who are like, I don't know anybody that's going to vote for Trump. Like, who would vote for that guy? I don't even understand, right? And then you've got Republicans. I've talked to
80 million
Republicans
of your fellow citizens, my friend.
I talked to Republicans, and they're the same way. They're like, I don't know. And people, they've relocated out of neighborhoods. You know, like, I can't live around these liberals. I have a friend of mine just moved back from Michigan. Like, I couldn't wait to get out of there. All those liberals, and people are kind of self-sorting. And so you grow up in a neighborhood. All you see is, let's say, Trump signs or whatever, or Biden side, right? Like, I mean, you don't see that crossover. And you know, people self-sort. They go to this church, everybody in the church, even the pastor, right? I mean, like, if you don't like what the pastor says, you leave the church, right? Used to be, it wasn't like that. Like, that was your church. That's where you stayed, and people hashed it out. But now you don't have to. Like, I'm not putting up with this. You just moved to a different neighborhood, different school, different whatever, and you sort yourself into these communities. And so nobody you know actually voted for the other guy. Of course you think, I can't think of a single person that voted for it. That's crazy, right? So, you know, I get it. I also just think it's almost irrelevant, because the election was stolen from each and every one of us that didn't want to. I mean, the Trump Biden thing was crazy to me. It's like, and even the new landscape with Kamala, like, how did these two guys get back in here? You know. Anyway, your thoughts?
No, I mean, I respect the care with language there. So, like, and I think we probably should do that. Like, when we talk on this show, if we want to say the election was stolen, we mean very specifically that after the votes were cast, they were manipulated in some way, so that either they were double counted or missing or whatever, in order to get an outcome other than the one voted on by the people who voted. And we say that's just what stolen means to us, right? I mean, we could use any other word, you know, but that's the word that we used. And then this other process, we're talking about, like, manipulation or sociological manipulation. That's
Media
different.
Manipulation, right?
Yeah. That it sort of steals democracy from us, but we're not going to use that word because we're reserving it for this other very specific thing. I do. I mean, I think that's probably a good idea. Keep us honest with ourselves. We don't wind up talking about multiple things.
Right?
Yeah. You know, you're talking about the whole conspiracy angle and the show Rome, which you introduced me to. HBO, it's a very funny show in a lot of ways. How many liberties they take with the historical record that we have, although they try to keep it close. Right? It's not total, but close. Well, one of the things I think that they did
these
really
two guys
well,
do intersect in some pretty big moments in history. You're like,
the two guys in the show.
Yeah.
Well, I love how also that's part of the show, is that people noticing, like, wow, you guys were there too. Like,
right.
At one point, someone just lists out, oh, you did this and this and that. You were, like, on the right place at the right time, like a dozen times all in a row.
Right.
And you know, which I appreciate. Like, at least they're aware that
this is completely implausible. Yeah.
write it into the story. But one of the things that I really like that they did with it is the conspiracy to kill Caesar, and just how disorganized and naive it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the historical record kind of bears this out a little bit, which was, you had a group of people who really didn't like Caesar, but for different reasons. And they were all benefiting from the way things were in the past. And they just kind of figured, they sort of had this sort of big brain moment, that if we just
got rid of him,
we can
go back to the way it was.
Then the way it was just magically comes back.
Right.
It just happens. We save the Republic, right? So, you know, kill Caesar, somebody yells out, you know, Sic Semper Tyrannis, right? Thus always to the tyrants. And then, like, we saved the Republic. It's like, no, you didn't. You did not save the Republic. But it's not like it's, you know, I think this is something that when we talk about conspiracies or conspiracy theories, there's this, I think, expectation that it was, like, really well planned. And really smart people got together, they coordinated everything. And it's like, no, sometimes it's kind of like everybody kind of is in this little room together and they all sort of nod and they think the other guy knows what they're doing, and they're going to play their part, and actually nobody knows what they're doing. Right. And so, okay, they kill Caesar, and then suddenly the entire city goes into civil war almost instantly. Mark Antony and Octavian team up with, I can't remember the third one.
Lepidus.
Yeah. And they're like, we got to go catch the conspirators. And like, then the three of them get into a kind of a civil war situation much later on, which I don't know. I'm not that far into the show, so I don't know if the show covers that stuff or not. But it's like, this was just not planned out. It's a conspiracy, and there's a decent number of people involved. But sometimes conspiracies can be kind of stupid, and still happen. You know, so when we're sort of laughing about the 2020 election and whether or not there was a conspiracy, and you had this stuff about like people pulling, you have witnesses went on record, said that they saw trucks, like these white panel vans, drive up, and people are unloading pre-printed ballots that just have Biden's name, nothing else on it, and they're just sending it through the machines as quickly as possible. And you've got folks holding up a whiteboard, to prevent people from watching what they're doing. Yeah. And it's like, oh, that's too stupid to be a conspiracy. Like, I mean, wouldn't it just be obvious to everyone what happened? It's like, well, that's what this guy said that he saw, and, swore up and down that it happened. You had similar kinds of reports in a lot of different places. And I think there's been this thing where like, well, there must, which cabal, wouldn't there be records of this kind of thing? It's like, maybe not. Like, maybe it's just kind of a stupid conspiracy that happened to work.
All come together at the same time.
Or you had like a couple of people say, hey, I have a printing system. I'm going to drop off ballots. You do whatever you want with them. That's all I'm going to do. And then like maybe some people take them up on it. Some people don't. It's kind of like, it can be like very loose, it's the JFK thing, movie. You talk about that one, the Oliver Stone. This is one of the points in there. It's like, well, who killed Kennedy? It's like, well, kind of everybody did, right? Like these people wanted him dead, and these people were willing to look the other way. And maybe somebody paid this person off, but out of which budget, no one will know. And it's like, it isn't even like a hard conspiracy. Like we all got in a room and shook hands. It was just sort of, people,
all these vested interests that align themselves. And
and so like thinking about like the Trump assassination attempt, it's like it's not even necessarily that like the Secret Service director made some call, on a secure line. Are we on secure line?
Right.
Like it didn't even have to be that. It could be as simple as like these people willing to look the other way.
Pay too much attention today.
Go do this, go do that. And it's like, well, who told you that? It's like, I don't even know. Like it was a rumor, and sort of like an emergent conspiracy, not like a planned conspiracy. So anyway, it's just kind of it's kind of fun watching the Rome show and watch the emergent conspiracy happen, and like, and of course it ends exactly the way you would have thought, right? There's just chaos afterwards because no one actually thought it through. They're just like, yeah, we're gonna do this thing.
What do they say? Chaos loves a vacuum, or power
loves it.
Yeah, power abhors a vacuum. Yeah,
right.
Power always rush in to like fill that vacuum up. Yeah,
someone's going to.
I think rewatching that show, those of you that haven't watched it, I mean, do yourself a favor. It's excellent. And
I have to warn everyone, this is early 2000s HBO. So like
so all of the Game of Thrones stuff, right? Lots of nudity and gratuitous,
lots of like horrible language,
right?
Swear words that I didn't even know could be put into that combination before, and there they are.
Right. You're like, what? But I thought it was so fun to watch Caesar, the guy who plays Caesar, what's his name? Hines, yeah, Syrian Hines. Just like, not to the. Did you watch Shogun? Have you seen that yet?
Yeah. I was the one who told you about it.
Okay. That guy, Toranaga, like that
Yeah.
guy was playing chess. I mean, when you get to the end and you realize, and I'm not no spoilers here, but when you realize who his informant was back at the very beginning in that final scene,
The level of control he had over the situation.
And you see that smirk on his face, and even the guy, when he's about to behead that guy, the guy turns around and smiles like, "You mofo," like, you know, like it's almost like begrudging respect, and he kind of smiles back at him and chops his head off. I was like, the level of three-dimensional chess that was going on there, fantastic. You know, obviously fiction, that doesn't happen in real life, but excellent, right? Caesar, on the other hand, when you watch this show, like, you can tell, like, he's not that far ahead. He's just willing to do the unexpected. Really, that's it. Like when he's outnumbered when they expel him from the city, and Pompey is like, they're going after each other, and he's outnumbered, and he's like, yeah, this is it. You know, we're probably gonna die today. But he's like, whatever, we're going. Right. This is today. We don't worry about that. Today's the day we fight. Right. And he's like, and let's go. And the willingness to put it out there on the line, and then just go for it. And like, hey, whatever, I'm going to die with my boots on. And this is what's going to happen. That ability. And then the ability to placate the different interests that were in place in a way that, like, Mark Antony, for example, not really able to do. Like, so to all this accomplishment and all this success on the battlefield that Mark Antony had, and didn't translate politically, because he was too used to, like, hey, when I tell my people to march this way, they march that way. When I want this person dead, we kill them.
I'm a general.
And we're just going to make this happen. No, you can't, and he has the army, has the strength, and like, whatever. And he makes a point of humiliating people. Whereas, like, Caesar, like, overwhelmed, like, makes it a point to forgive his enemies, to like hand out clemency at appropriate times, to reward people. At the one point when he's like, well, I can't, when the Varenas character stands up to him or whatever, and he's like, I can't punish you. I can't punish you. So I'm going to have to reward you, because I have to be seen to be behind your action. So I'm going to make you a senator or whatever. And when he leaves, and Mark Antony's like, how could you do? You would kill somebody else. He's like, well, I can't kill him. I mean, he's obviously got very powerful gods behind him, and I'm not going to kill a man who like that, and just that, like,
fortune has made him his pet. So
who am I to argue with the gods, right? And I just think that is like, there's very little to respect on the world stage today, from that level. I think
shrewdness.
That's the shrewdness. I mean, Putin maybe, although I think he's put himself into a ridiculous position. I mean, like, when you see what the Chinese did to him this last week is just.
I didn't follow what happened.
They had, I can't remember whether it's Airbus or something else, but basically they're trying to build a competing, plane to take business away from Boeing, Airbus, whatever.
Yeah.
And I guess they were using all these Russian, they were joint venture, Chinese and Russian, whatever. And then just at the last minute, basically jettisoned the Russians from the partnership, like basically used all their IP. And then we're like, yeah, we don't need you anymore. I'll have to send you the article on it. And just like, I mean, it's funny because somebody was like, well, I was listening to some podcast the other day, and they were like, oh, the Chinese hate Biden or whatever like that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, the Chinese are benefiting so much from this Ukraine situation, like, and the sanctions have been put on Russia. Russia was selling all its natural gas to Europe, and before this, and when they invaded, now, all these sanctions in place, the only market they have is to sell to China. And China's paying, like, I think 1/5, or I mean,
they're getting cheap,
super cheap like that, and they're making billions of dollars, or saving billions of dollars on natural gas. Like, why would they want that to end? Like, that's beneficial to them. So
plus it makes them look like, as a current communist country, being elder statesmen to this former communist country that still hasn't quite figured out how to, figured out the world yet, and like, please show restraint, and it looks good. It looks good for the CCP.
It really does. I mean, like they're playing their cards right now, but and also like they have such a real politic sense of. I mean, they do what's right for China every time, and I think that's certainly missing in our politics right now. And
make China great again.
What's that?
Make China great.
Make China great. Yeah, but there's no again. It's just make China great. Yeah.
No, I mean they have had enormous empires in the past, right? So like,
I think the difference is, dude, they're not
glorious past.
But you don't hear that. I'm not in China. Obviously, I'm not reading Chinese newspapers, but you don't get the sense of restoration, right? Like,
no.
You see what I'm saying? Like the Trump movement is very much about restoration. Putin very much about restoration, right? Europe is more about building something for the future. It might be restored, but you don't hear like, or tying everything together like the Roman Empire or whatever. You don't hear that. Yeah. And China certainly, like, they're not talking about restoring Ming Dynasty or whatever. Like, I mean, it's all about how do we create something new for the future. And I don't know. We could use a big dose of that, I think.
Building something new for the future,
for sure. And I think that's in the Rome sequence. What you were saying earlier about like these senators that were like, oh, we need to remove this so we can get back to X, right? And whereas Caesar certainly wasn't concerned about that. It was, this system is dysfunctional. I mean, he was like, look, this system is dysfunctional, and I'm going to come in here and fix it. Like, that was his. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they actually had, it's so funny, people, dictator for life or whatever is what Caesar was finally the final straw that caused these senators to kill him, right? But that was actually in the Republic, and I actually went back and read some things. The Roman Republic, they had it was a dictator, that was their term. They did it, and it was a process to appoint somebody. When the system would get out of hand, we're going to give it over to somebody who's going to fix it, and then they would have a limited term, a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case may be, and then they would return power to the Senate. And initially, Caesar was named dictator for a year. Which nobody had a problem with. And it was almost more of a, like, let's give this guy a gratuity to like go away. And he just took it seriously. And it was like, well, why would I give this up? You guys still aren't fixed. So we need, we'll just extend it for life until I feel like it's fixed. And then going forward from there, like, I mean, when you read about what Octavian was able to do, or Augustus, I mean, basically, historians would say he founded the Roman Empire more than any other person. Like, I mean, Caesar as an individual created the conditions for it to be born, but Octavian really brought it into but man, when you look at some of the stuff that he did in the show, and also like in real life, when you go and look, this guy completely ruthless in eliminating dissent, but also laying down the law, but in a way that people were grateful for it. They were like, well, thank God.
Finally.
Some order in place, right? And then you had this, for hundreds of years, this massive expansion under a system that, despite its leaders, you would even say, like, some of these emperors were after him were just off their rocker. And yet the empire flourished, because of the systems that he put in place.
Fascinatingly enough, and I hope they include this in the show, but after Octavian is successful defeating Mark Antony at Actium, comes back to Rome and offers. So he had been given also this title of dictator for life. He comes back to Rome and is on record offering to give the power back. So he's like, mission accomplished. I don't need this anymore. And the Senate refuses.
Right.
And that makes him emperor, right?
But he even refused the title emperor for years, and instead preferred to be called first citizen, which I thought was very interesting. Historically, they don't really do that. They say the Latin words, but they don't, unless you don't really know. But like he insisted on that. He's like, no, I need to be seen as one of the people that is. I'm just one of these guys that
I'm just happen to be the first citizen.
And I'm a
citizen like you.
Yeah, and they trust my vision, and because it so like lowers people's defenses, and I think that's one of the things with this with Project 25. I don't know if you saw the director for Project 25 got fired, stepped down, whatever the case may be. Like it's these we talked about it a couple days ago. There's the proposals, the way that they're, and I I had a couple of conversations afterwards offline. Some of my friends called me. I was very upset that I thought that there was anything redeeming in Project 25 at all. And I was like, well, what about
There's
this?
going to be something good in some political plan.
There's always, yeah, exactly. And some of the reforms I think are drastically needed. Some of them are outrageous. Even Trump said that. It's like, dude, look, these are ridiculous. And it's because it's so, it's such a in your face, like drastic power grab from that constituency, framed as such. I mean, if you read the language, it's very power seizing. I mean, even if the effect of it may or may not be that way, but like they frame it as, dude, we're taking our country back, and this beat back the forces of this and that and the other. And it's like, this is very military style language.
Onward Christian soldiers.
Onward Christians, it is. And but it raises people's defenses. And when you look at these figures from history, there's so much to learn from them in not just the tactics that they deployed maybe on the battlefield or whatever, but in their style. Like this person's style was easily accommodated. I mean, Alexander the Great is a great example of, they don't really reference him in the show Rome, but after I finished Rome, I watched Cleopatra, the Elizabeth Taylor movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fun
watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. There's a couple scenes where Caesar's talking about how he emotionally reacted to seeing the tomb of Alexander the Great. And, but like Alexander, like here, this guy conquers the known world, but the biggest reason that he was so successful is because he never imposed, he collected taxes. I mean, what he cared about was swear allegiance and pay tribute. That's it. You keep whatever gods you want to worship, however you go about things, like no big deal.
In fact, we're going to burn a crap ton of incense on your altar.
On your altar. You tell me how you want me to worship while I'm in your country, and no big deal.
No problem.
That ironically is what people cared about more. Like that they didn't care about paying. I mean,
they were worried about their culture being destroyed.
And
they got to keep it.
Bingo. And I think, and then I'm going to switch sides here. That's what, especially with MAGA Nation, right? Macedonia, sorry.
Yeah.
That is the biggest thing, I think, is the rallying cry. What makes that such a powerful movement is because they have been made to feel that their culture is under attack, the Christian culture. And, as a Christian, I think I had a talk with our pastor growing up, Brother Beckham, the other day, and I was like, this is help me understand this, right? Like, do you really believe that the culture, Christianity is under attack in America? And Brother Beckham was like, well, you don't? And I was like, no. I'm like, objectively, like, I mean, Christianity is the de facto religion of most people, even people that aren't religious. Most of them, I mean, for decades, that's been the case. Now, are we in a post-church kind of era? Would church leaders maybe feel like, hey, membership in the church is dropping off, people are less interested in church? Well, that's, yes. Sure. But that's across the board with all religion. Non-fundamentalist religions, right? I mean, Islam obviously is on the rise and whatnot, but but Christians being persecuted. I mean, come on, like God is in the Pledge of Allegiance, and nobody's confused about it. That's the Christian God. I mean, like everybody knows that. Like that's not some pagan deity. That's Jehovah, right? And
not Zeus. No.
And despite all the laws saying you can't pray in school, whatever, people still pray in school. Students lead prayers in school. You have school Christian revivals, Christian rock bands, all this stuff. Like there's a massive commercialized Christian subculture, books, radio, TV, speaking circuits, whatever. And like, how in the world can you say, like, the very videos that talk about where Christians talk about how they're persecuted are aired on YouTube and have millions of views? Like, how could you be you're not persecuted, you're not deplatformed. Like, it's still out there for everybody to see. So that was my point of view, and his point of view was, yes, I agree with you, and maybe the language is a little overblown in that context. And in another context, people see the things like the Last Supper at the Olympics, for example. We didn't even talk about that. I got multiple emails and Facebook messages about like, oh, well, now you see, and I'm like, I don't see anything. That's a celebration of a bacchanalial. I mean, like that. There's Bacchus right there in the middle of the table. Like, that's not the Last Supper. That's something totally different. I mean, like the silver horse running down the road. All that's part of Greek mythology, which, by the way, is where the Olympics come from. Like, the entire festival. However,
I feel like the Olympics are allowed to dip their toe into Greek mythology.
If anybody is, they are, right?
Should be allowed. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, they were making fun of the Last Supper,
They were.
But I don't know. I don't think they were. However,
the arrangement was meant to evoke the Last Supper, probably playfully. I don't think the designer meant it as like a criticism. It was for fun. Like, hey, here's a set of poses. Everyone at one side of the table like this. We've all seen it before.
Half the performers may not have even. I don't know. I think that's.
It was. I think it was meant for fun.
Well, either way, right? The fact is that some Christians saw that as making fun of their religion. They were offended, including the Catholic Church, which, I mean, that's a pretty big wing of Christianity. So, and the response from the Olympic Committee was, hey, if we offended anybody, we're sorry, right? And I like to think, I mean, first of all, that is the appropriate response, because
didn't mean to offend you.
Yeah, we didn't mean to offend you, and we're sorry. However, I do think, and this is where Brother Beckham did have, I thought, a very good point, which was like, look, imagine if that was Islam being made fun of, right? Or if Muslims thought that Islam was being made fun of, even if that wasn't the intent, like, oh, you're mocking Allah or whatever. That would be, there would be a massive outrage, but also that you would have scores of what we would call liberals, let's say, coming to their defense as this is outrageous, etc. Whereas when Christianity is mocked, the response is get over it, right? And so I don't know whether I would label that persecution, but I do understand, okay, when you're used to your faith being revered in a bedrock of society, and you now find that it's not revered and no longer a bedrock of society, that can be disquieting. I'll use those words. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, let me react to that. I can totally see where he's coming from, and I think I understand your point on this. My view, kind of rewinding the clock a little bit further, say, 1,500 years or 1,600 years.
Rewind.
Rewind. I don't think Christianity does well as the dominant or establishment religion. I think that whenever it is in that position, it tends to get a little weird. I think
weird
it's hard.
Again.
What?
Weird. Again.
I know.
It's hard to stay away from that word. Yeah.
It's a fertile word. So pregnant with meaning. Anyway.
So maybe not a conspiracy. Maybe just easy to use.
Easy to use. If your founder says things like, remember the world is going to hate you because but it hated me first, and it's like, I think Christianity is at its most vital when it's unpopular. That doesn't necessarily mean illegal, but just that, if someone said in a nice, polite society, like, oh, you're a Christian, you like you celebrate Christmas and Easter. It's like, no, I actually believe in a God, and that he's in three persons, and one of them was a human, was executed, and then came back to life, and is now ascended. He went up into the skies in heaven. It's like, wow, like you're one of those, you're fanatic. Like, well, but
that is what the book says. Yeah.
That is what the book says. And here's the thing, though. Don't worry. My fanaticism mostly involves, I have to sit here and think to myself, did I forgive everyone in the way that I hope to be forgiven? in the future? And am I loving you the way that would I give you the same preference I would give myself? And if I'm saying no to that, that's something I need to actually work on. So, if I have a delusion, don't worry. It's a friendly and harmless delusion. And,
Right.
And everyone's like, okay, well, that's not so bad. And we move on, and they kind of look at me funny. I think that's actually a better position for Christianity to be in than to be the establishment religion.
I'm thinking of that line from the Miracle on 34th Street when the guy
his
thinks
delusion
he's
is
Santa Claus.
Harmless. He just wants to make people happy.
Maybe he's just a little crazy, like painters or gymnastics or some of those people in Washington.
Yeah, just a little crazy.
Just a little crazy.
Just a little crazy. But actually, I think
that's really good.
Yeah. So if it's like, oh yeah, the politicians are quick to defend other religions, but they're not quick to defend Christianity. It's sort of like open season on Christianity. Like, I actually think of that as probably a good thing. Although it's uncomfortable if you're not used to it. And so it's like, I think Christians should get used to, and like maybe even for a little bit seek it out in order to sort of build up an immunity to it. But they get used to having your religion mocked and your most cherished held beliefs laughed at. And I think that's something that is worthwhile. You should do that. So I think soon it'll be for everywhere and easy to find, but maybe now you have to go looking for it in the images of the Bacchanalia or whatever. And it's like, I think there was sort of a little fun twist there on the posing of the Da Vinci's Last Supper, and have fun with that. Sure.
Yeah.
You got
a lot of what they call it, junkyard dogs for God out there. They're going to stand up for God's honor and go bash some heads in. That's like, I don't think
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think our generation is not going to be martyred. But I think maybe the pride in their religion will be martyred. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's good. So I'm just not that worried about that part. I mean, it is hard for me because I know in my industry, if we have, say, the Harris administration come in for the next 4 years, I think my industry will probably be there'll be a lot of pressure on us for various things. So, I think that anyone that's hoping to keep their tax exempt status or still be friends with the government in terms of grants or loans or, I think that might be on its way out, and that'll be very hard. I'm not looking forward to when that changes. But it may be better for the church as a whole to be unpopular.
Interesting. Well, on that note, we can end the podcast. Food for thought for next time.
Go join a monastery.
I'd love to get Brother Beckham on here. He'd be a good.
We should.
Yeah,
we should. If he'd put up with us,
he probably would.
Yeah,
I'll invite him. I'll send him an email.
Okay.
Yeah, man. And think about if you have anybody you want to invite on too that you think would be fun to either contribute or spar with.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you to all our viewers, and we'll see you next week.
Yes.